Andrew Yu Lee is fairly significant for me because obviously a big part of the meaning behind it is living in peace. I was in the police for 14 years, so I had my own very clear views around how we make New Zealand safe. I have got zero tolerance for bullies. I've got zero tolerance for gangs. I've got zero tolerance for gang leaders. I've got zero tolerance for organised crime. We've got on top of that, you don't see gang members now in their patches. The drive-by shootings have reduced significantly. You don't see gangs taking over public spaces or provincial towns anymore. Most of the gang members now are in prison, and that's where they should be. Because last year, I was lucky enough to accompany the Prime Minister on our trade delegation up to China, where we stopped in Shanghai, which Shanghai just completely blew me away. It was just such a beautiful modern city. And then on to Beijing, which had the contrast of clearly seeing the history that was there. And then we've got Chris Luxon. When you look at him, I don't think there's anyone that could have held our coalition together the way that he has. It's been a good government for us as a country. I'm a huge admirer of him. His background, his experience as a minister, he empowers and enables you to go and do your work, but he holds you to account. He expects to see results. And I personally feel really strongly that our Chinese Kiwis back here in New Zealand have got the best of both worlds because they've got China and New Zealand. Andrew Yu Lee is fairly significant for me because obviously a big part of the meaning behind it is living in peace, and so I've got the police portfolio, and obviously one of my main objectives when I came into becoming police minister is to make us the safest country in the world. And it was nice to see that in a recent global survey, New Zealand is currently has come up to the second safest country in the world, and I'm very aware of how sensitive our Chinese community is to public safety. They work extremely hard. They are good citizens that don't cause trouble, and they want to be safe when they're going about their daily lives and in their workplace. So I've been very, very focused on making sure that we actually make New Zealand a much safer country for everyone. I'm Minister of Police, and I'm also the Minister of Correction. And the reason why I actually asked the Prime Minister for both of those portfolios is because I feel very strongly they're the two portfolios that do most of the heavy lifting and have most of the responsibility around public safety. There's lots of Chinese officers that we have both in police and our correction service who do an outstanding job every day, who turn up to do their public service and keep our communities safe. I've also got emergency management and recovery. That obviously keeps me really busy because we're a country that obviously keeps getting hit with these weather events. There's only one country in the world that's more likely to be hit by a weather event, and that is Bangladesh. The Prime Minister was very clear with me when I became Minister. I want you to identify what our risks are and then have a plan in terms of how we deal with those risks. And so that's what we've been doing. I've also got sport and recreation, which I love. New Zealanders and Kiwis are people that love embracing sport, they love the outdoors. I've also got ethnic communities, which I was very proud to get because ethnic communities also I'm dealing with a lot in my policing as police minister. And so I've made sure that I've had a lot of engagement, listening a lot, identifying what more we can do, and then sort of implementing that and making it happen. I was in the police for 14 years, mainly as a police dog handler and a member of the Armed Offender Squad. So I had my own very clear views around how we make New Zealand safe. I have got zero tolerance for bullies. I've got zero tolerance for gangs. I've got zero tolerance for gang leaders. I've got zero tolerance for organised crime. I feel very strongly that our country should be focused on the victims and making sure that there's actually serious consequences sitting alongside the offender. And so that's really the philosophy that I brought into the job. It was a back to basics approach, so I wanted to see police officers back highly visible in their communities. Number one, it creates reassurance. Number two, it's also very proactive in terms of sending a very clear message to anyone that wanted to come out and commit some sort of crime, especially retail crime, that our police are there and they're present and they'll take action. We've targeted the gangs and we set up gang disruption units. We've given the police new powers around gangs, which have been very effective. When I became minister, it was only 2.5 years ago. I don't know if you remember, we had gangs taking over provincial towns. They were intimidating and taking over public spaces. We were having drive-by shootings just about every week. Gang members were wearing their patches in public in large numbers to intimidate members of the public, we've got on top of that. You don't see gang members now in their patches. The drive-by shootings have reduced significantly. You don't see gangs taking over public spaces or provincial towns anymore. Most of the gang members now are in prison, and that's where they should be. And also, we've worked really hard to reduce violent youth offending. We have reduced serious victimisations by 49,000. We know that we've got a lot more work to do, but we are definitely heading in the right track. Remember that the gang legislation that we tried to introduce was very controversial. The academics and the Labor Party and the Greens and Te Party Māori saying it was terrible and awful and we shouldn't be doing it. But look how successful it's been. We inherently know we are on the side of victims, and we're on the side of good law-abiding Kiwis that want to live in the safest country in the world. One of those policies is the move on orders. It's not about people that have got genuine homelessness. We need to identify those. We need to help them. A lot of the people that come out on the street, it's a lifestyle choice. The victims themselves, they get used by the gangs to peddle drugs. They create all sorts of antisocial behaviour. So not only a risk to the public, they're a risk to themselves as well. There are no powers in this country at the moment to allow the police or a government agency to be able to actually get them to engage and actually move them off the streets, so they're not living there. So quite simply, the move on orders is giving them the ability to be able to do that. On the flip side of it is people in genuine homelessness. Of course, we're not just going to pick them up and drop them somewhere else. We're actually going to engage and actually make them engage so that we can actually get their housing situation sorted out so they have got somewhere safe and dry and warm to sleep. We're much better prepared than what we were. My big focus was, and I received Sir Jerry Matapara's report after Cyclone Gabriel, and so my big focus was making sure that we weren't complacent. You've got to be making decisions early, you've got to be pre-positioning people, you've got to be proactive in terms of making sure you're in the best possible position to deal with a weather event when it's coming at us. Because the beautiful thing is we live in a golden age in terms of science, so we're often given enough warning to be able to get organised and make sure that we mitigate those weather events as much as we can. So big piece of work for me in terms of EMA. My agency now has got a deeper operational capability. We have also, for the first time, announced this year that we're going to invest into what's called a common operating picture. So you'd think that in New Zealand we're only 5.5 million people, there would be a common system that speaks to itself. But what we do in true Kiwi fashion is each sort of local council or district council or regional council has invested in their own bespoke systems. Everyone has been asking me, we've been talking about this for over 2 decades, that we need to invest in a common operating picture. So the government announced at this budget that we're going to do that. It's a massive contribution, the economic contribution, the cultural contribution, which is really significant and important, because last year I was lucky enough to accompany the Prime Minister on our trade delegation up to China, where we stopped in Shanghai, which Shanghai just completely blew me away. It's just such a beautiful modern city. And then on to Beijing, which had the contrast of clearly seeing the history that was there. Our diaspora, Chinese diaspora here, is such an important link for us back to China. We've got lots of business opportunities there between New Zealand and China. China is leading. I went to some of the tech companies with these young entrepreneurial Chinese business people that are coming up with cutting edge technology and embracing AI, and I personally think we feel really strongly that our Chinese Kiwis back here in New Zealand have got the best of both worlds, because they've got China and New Zealand. The Chinese community has got such a long history here in New Zealand and a massive contribution. Thank you to the Chinese community for everything that you do here in New Zealand. Number one, you are Kiwis. But number two, you're proud of where you're from, you're proud of your culture, and that brings so much to us as a country. So thank you for everything that you do for us. I just think that we've got massive engagement with the Chinese community. I mean, I don't think I'd go a week when I'm not having some form of engagement with our Chinese community. So we come from our different countries and we have our links, and it's an important part of our history and our culture. But at the end of the day, we're all Kiwis. Obviously, we've got Nancy Liu, who is an outstanding caucus member in our caucus. She is, and for me personally, she helps me so much with my work right across all of our ethnic communities. So she's a great link for us into our Chinese diaspora. I saw something that there's about 160 different languages spoken in New Zealand, so it's pretty special. The Chinese community has always been big supporters of the National Party, and we don't take that for granted, and we actually need that support. This is a critical election for us. Without a doubt, we've had some headwinds that have impacted the economy, but we have been working really hard as government to get the levers set up in the right position to be able to see some really strong economic growth. I think that Erica Stanford's done a very good job. Education is critically important. I know for a fact that our Chinese community is sensitive and recognises and understands the importance of education, and especially in being able to change your circumstances. Simeon Brown with health, we've reintroduced targets again, so that the previous government scrapped those. You cannot measure and you cannot improve things unless you're actually willing to measure yourself and judge yourself on those results. Myself and Paul Goldsmith have been very focused on public safety. We're definitely headed in the right direction now. A lot more work to do, without a doubt. And then we've got Chris Lutsing. When you look at him, I don't think there's anyone that could have held our coalition together the way that he has. It's been a good government for us as a country. I'm a huge admirer of him. His background, his experience as a minister, he empowers and enables you to go and do your work, but he holds you to account. He expects to see results. I think we've been a very good government for this country. I think that we're definitely heading in the right direction, and I would ask the Chinese community to seriously consider getting them behind us and supporting us this year at the general election.